Before we begin part 3 of this Warriors Dynasty series, I want to take a moment to say rest in peace to the great Bill Russell, as we lost a great one, arguably the greatest ever, a champion on and off the court. Thank you for paving the way. Let's just have a brief moment of silence before we continue. Okay, let the show continue. So after losing the 2019 finals and now moving to the other side of the Bay Area from Oakland to San Francisco to now play at the Chase Center, here we are at the end of the Warriors' run of 5 straight trips to the NBA Finals. A lot is about to change. Things are about to get a lot worse before they get better again though. Kevin Durant would decide to go to the Brooklyn Nets to team up with Kyrie Irving and try to prove that he can win a championship as the man of the team, knowing that despite him being a 2-time Finals MVP, no one was impressed because he joined a team that won 73 games and was a Draymond suspension and Andrew Bogut injury away from going back-to-back without him. Well, in case you live under a rock, that hasn't worked out very well. Andre Iguodala would end up going to Miami, so with Kevin Durant in Brooklyn and out with an injury anyways, and Klay Thompson out with an injury, the Warriors would acquire D'Angelo Russell coming off an All-Star season in a sign-and-trade for Kevin Durant to do what they can to fill that void. The Warriors also got Shabazz Napier and Treveon Graham in that sign-and-trade, but then they would trade them to the Timberwolves for the draft rights to Lior Eliyahu. If I botched his name, I apologize, but he never played an NBA game anyways and likely never will. So Steph, D'Lo, and Draymond for the 3 best players in the Warriors this upcoming season. Okay, definitely not nearly as scary as when the Warriors had KD, but that doesn't sound that bad, right? Just wait a little bit. So Quinn Cook and DeMarcus Cousins joined the Lakers, so the Warriors signed 3-point specialist Alec Burks and son of former NBA All-Star Glenn Robinson III, who was now joining his 5th team since he entered the league in the 2014-15 season. Sean Livingston announced his retirement and was able to go from having a tragic story to a successful NBA career, even if not living up to his draft hype. I also forgot to mention in part 2 that David West retired after 2018, so he got to go out on top. In the 2019 draft, the Warriors hit on their 28th overall pick by selecting Jordan Poole. However, it would take him a few years to really have an impact on the team. Their 2nd round pick, Eric Pascal, would have a more immediate impact, but more for empty stats, which I'm sure people will forget about years from now if people haven't already forgotten about that. The Warriors also signed Juan Toscano Anderson, who was undrafted in 2015 and would make his NBA debut in the 2019-20 season. His stats most certainly don't jump out at you, but I think he had to do something right to get minutes at the NBA level, especially on what would be a championship team a couple years later. So without a super team and the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, after taking the Warriors to 6 games just the year before with their 6th man being their leading scorer, and the Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis being looked at as the top dogs in the NBA, Steph has something to prove, right? The Warriors still had the 6th highest odds to win the championship going into the season, so they weren't expected to be bad at all, but just no longer the team to beat in the NBA. 4 games into the season though, in which Steph struggled in, he broke his hand and would miss much of the season. The Warriors were doomed, as this would become a lost season for them. Draymond Green, once an All-Star, started becoming a meme for averaging a triple single.
He had his normal triple single.
And not being able to be as effective without the Splash Brothers. He was already averaging 7.4 points per game in the 2018-19 season while shooting just 44.5% from the field, but in the 2019-20 season, he couldn't even shoot 40% from the field. Kevon Looney, who was an unsung hero for the Warriors after they lost KD in the playoffs the year before, as mentioned in part 2, signed a 3-year $15 million deal in this offseason, but then had a hamstring problem diagnosed as neuropathy, which is a disorder resulting from nerve damage outside of the brain and spinal cord, and that limited him to just 20 games in the 2019-20 season. Although D'Angelo Russell was an All-Star the season prior, it was clear that he's not a guy who can lead this team, even while he did average 23.6 points per game. He did lead the Nets to the playoffs the year before as as the 8th seed, but he was also surrounded by better role players while on the Nets than he is now with the Warriors. D'Angelo Russell was still not very efficient, as he shot just 43% from the field on 55.8% true shooting. What the Warriors didn't tell us this whole time though is that D'Angelo Russell was really only brought in to be a trade piece, even though we thought that he found his home in Golden State after signing a 4-year deal with them and was an all-star just a season before. That wouldn't be the case though, which I will talk about in a little bit. The Warriors started the season just 4-16, their worst start since the 1999 to 2000 season. With their 33rd loss on January 14th, 2020 against rising star Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, this would mark the first time since 2013 that the Warriors would not win at least 50 games. The very next game, the Warriors lost their 10th straight, something that has not happened since 2002 when Jason Richardson and Gilbert Arenas were rookies for the Warriors. How bad the Warriors have become even made people turn on Steve Kerr, and it did seem like he was just coaching great talent this whole time. Well, that sure was recency bias, because like I mentioned in part 2 of this series, the Warriors were only a good team when he took over, and he made them a championship team without any major roster changes. He was able to elevate Steph from just an all-star to a 2-time MVP, Klay Thompson to all-star status, and Draymond Green from bench player to all-star and defensive player of the year. He couldn't make D'Angelo Russell the guy who could lead this team to overcome the injuries as a ball-dominant guard, playing an emotion offense, and while Kevin Durant did work as an isolation player, obviously D'Angelo Russell is not nearly as good as Kevin Durant, and also Kevin Durant had Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green playing alongside him. Steve Kerr also did things that didn't make sense, like running the plays he ran for Kevin Durant for Omari Spellman, who I think everyone already forgot about, right? Or people definitely will forget about him a few years from now if they haven't yet. But to be honest, I don't think the Warriors would have won many games that season no matter what adjustments were made. With this team as banged up as they were at this time, there's really only so much a coach can do, and I don't think even Phil Jackson, Red Auerbach, or Greg Popovich could have saved the 2020 Warriors. With this being a lost season, clearly changes needed to be made. Willie Cauley-Stein, who was an off-season addition for the Warriors, would get traded to the Mavericks in late January for a 2020 second-round pick, which indicated that the Warriors were about to punt this season away by trading their starting center, although he only averaged 22.9 minutes per game and scored 7.9 points per game anyways. At the trade deadline, the Warriors traded D'Angelo Russell with 2 non-impactful role players to the Minnesota Timberwolves for former #1 overall pick Andrew Wiggins, along with 2021 protected first and second round picks. So despite signing a 4-year deal with the Warriors, D'Angelo Russell's stay with them was very short-lived, and Steve Kerr said he thought the fit would be questionable from the beginning, with D'Lo being a ball-dominant guard, not surrounded by as much talent as the Warriors had in previous years, and also him not being nearly as good as Kevin Durant. Well, Steve Kerr didn't say all of that, but I'll let you see the interview right here.
Well, I think, to be perfectly blunt, the fit was questionable when we signed him, but nobody questioned that. When you already have Steph and Klay, and you add a ball-dominant guard, you can rightfully question the fit. That was one of the reasons the trade rumors started before the season even began. And I think D'Angelo understood that when he signed the contract, and our organization understood that as well. So the trade ended up happening. I think we at least got a 50-game look at what it might look like. Of course, that kind of went awry when Steph got injured. But you get a good enough look and a long enough look to picture how the positional fit goes, and I think you have an idea. I think we have an idea that the other move, the other player makes more sense. And in this case, I would say for both teams. Yeah. And so I'm happy for D'Angelo. I think he's going to have a great situation in Minneapolis, and I think Omari as well. The way Minnesota is playing, shooting a lot of threes. He's a pick and pop 5. I really hope that Omari and Jacob can get a chance to play and succeed there. And I want all our players to do well. So in the end, I think this could work out for everybody.
Interesting take by Kerr, but hey, it aged well. I don't think people agreed with him back then though. When Wiggins was a rookie, he did win Rookie of the Year, and in 2017, he truly looked like he was on his way up, averaging 23.6 points per game while starting all 82 games. However, his defense was never even close to league average, and after what seemed like a breakout year in 2017, Wiggins severely regressed and was even being labeled as a bust by some people, even while averaging 22.4 points per game for the Timberwolves during the 2019-20 season. He just wasn't seen as a winning player and was only seen as an inefficient volume scorer who doesn't play defense. Things were absolutely about to change though. This would be the best thing for both Wiggins and the Warriors, but we won't see it just yet, as Wiggins would only play 12 games for the Warriors in 2020 and would put up 19.4 points per game, but it didn't translate to winning basketball. The same day as the Wiggins and D'Lo trade, the Warriors also traded Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson III to the Sixers for 3 second-round picks, which really didn't do anything for either team, but was just another indicator that the Warriors were punting this season away after going from dynasty to worst team in the league. Burks did average a career high of 16.1 points per game, while Glenn Robinson III also put up a career high of nearly 13 points per game, while both of them started all 48 games they played in for the Warriors. Clearly though, those were just empty stats, with the Warriors being the worst team in the league. Steph would return from injury on March 5th against the Raptors and scored 23 points, but on not so good efficiency, as the Warriors lost yet another game. The Warriors played 2 more games which Steph did not suit up for before the season was shut down due to the global pandemic. That would be the last time the Warriors played that season, as they finished with a 15-50 record, which got them to miss the playoffs for the first time since 2012, as the Warriors were not invited to the bubble in Orlando to finish out the season. This would land them the 2nd overall pick, which they used to select center James Wiseman. So now with the original Warriors core of Steph, Klay, and Dre back, along with Andrew Wiggins in a supporting role rather than the lead role he was supposed to be coming into the league, with no Kevin Durant but having James Wiseman, the Warriors looked like they were back on the verge of contending going into the 2020-21 season. However, after recovering from the torn ACL Klay Thompson suffered in the 2019 finals, he would rupture his Achilles tendon while playing a pickup game in LA. Now it's up to Stephen Curry to carry this team to the playoffs. The Warriors were able to trade for Kelly Oubre before the season started, after he averaged a career high 18 points per game the previous year, but he would end up not being the best fit for the team. So while the Warriors system has been great for some guys, Kelly Oubre and D'Angelo Russell would be proof that it's not for everyone. Oubre did have a 40-point game in February against the Mavericks, but really wasn't very consistent. A perfect example of that is him scoring 14 points on just 5 of 16 the very next game after he dropped 40, then 24 the following game, and then 12 points on just 4 of 14. Despite the belief that Steph would carry the Warriors to the playoffs, he shot under 40% in both of the first 2 games of the 2020-21 season, and he had people saying he's washed, as his numbers in the 5 games he played in the 2019-20 season were not very good. How foolish, right? What people do not remember, I wouldn't remember this myself if I didn't check Basketball Reference before recording this video, is that Steph had a 6-game stretch in his first MVP season where he shot 39% from January 23rd to February 3rd. He also had a 3-game stretch that year in March where he shot even worse than that. It's just part of how sports work. You're not going to be great all the time. Not to mention, Steph was still only 32 years old going into the 2020-21 season. Sure, he's not young anymore, but he's not exactly old yet, and he absolutely still had plenty left in the tank. And obviously still does even today. Another thing, while Steph already has been stronger than he looks, as he's already been capable of deadlifting 400 pounds, with the pandemic suspending the NBA season and the Warriors not being invited to the bubble, Steph took that time to build more muscle. On Basketball Reference, ESPN, NBA.com, Steph is listed as 185 pounds. However, according to Steph, he's 200 now. This is just according to Steph, but based on this pic that appeared on Instagram, I think it's believable. Steph would have his "I took that personally" moment when many people said he's washed and carry the offense to a 39-33 record while scoring 32 points per game on the season, giving him his second scoring title of his career, and be third in MVP voting to Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. Sure, Andrew Wiggins scored 18.6 points per game, but we saw it in Minnesota that he's not the guy you want leading your team, and he's not exactly ideal as your second option either. I said Steph carried the offense because the Warriors still had the 5th best defense in 2021. Even though Draymond Green's triple-single stat line may have become a meme, he was still valuable for his defense as he did make the all-defensive first team for the 4th time in his career, and most certainly never lost his ability to be a vocal leader.
Hey, listen, come here. I told you, if you're open anywhere on the floor, I'm gonna hit you. You can catch that ball right there and make a play. I didn't see it. But you didn't see it. That's my point. Always see the ball.
While Draymond has been able to do everything but scoring well, Andrew Wiggins started showing that he can be a 3-and-D player, unlike the inefficient mid-range shooter who can't even guard a cardboard cutout that he was in Minnesota. James Wiseman was underwhelming, Kelly Oubre was inconsistent. The Warriors clinched the 8th seed in the West, but then with the newly implemented play-in tournament, the Warriors lost both games and missed the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. After losing the 2nd play-in game, Steph told the press,
"Don't want to see us next year."
Wow, did that age beautifully. Although Steph had an amazing season, how his minutes were managed was something that Steve Kerr received some criticism for. So what Steve Kerr did was play him the entire 1st and 3rd quarters and having him play the second half of the 2nd and 4th quarters. I think it was a difficult situation for Steve Kerr since the Warriors didn't have the depth that they once had anymore, and with Steph being 32 years old, you can't play him 38 minutes per game anymore like in 2013. Again, I don't think any coach would have made this Warriors team a contender, and just Steph alone made them above 500. Steve Kerr has said we're not throwing Steph out there for 40 minutes to chase wins, and I did just talk about the minutes part. No one plays 40 minutes per game in today's NBA anyways. Sure, you want to make the playoffs so when Klay comes back the following season, this supporting cast has some playoff experience. However, I think Steve Kerr knew what he was doing in a season where the Warriors are only expected to be a low-seeded playoff team at best anyways. At least things did work out the following year. Maybe if he moved Steph's minutes around, that could have made a difference though. Steve Kerr definitely got petty about it by throwing Steph in during blowouts in the 4th quarter a little earlier than usual, but not playing him a few extra minutes in a close game. I still think calling Steve Kerr overrated is an overreaction. Sure, he's not perfect, but no one is, and he wasn't dealt a great hand in the first 2 years after KD left anyways. Kevon Looney was also very inefficient for a center when he filled in for James Wiseman, but I'll talk about his turnaround in part 4. It doesn't look like a huge turnaround if you just look at Basketball Reference, but I'll save all that for later. So that's it for part 3. Warriors fans watching, I'm sorry to go back to the darker days of your fandom, but I hope I was able to be as insightful to you as you would have liked when you clicked this video. Warriors fan or not, if you did find me to be so, if you could please consider dropping a like for the algorithm, that'd be much appreciated. Please consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you don't miss the finale of this series, and when I get to making some baseball and football content again too. Hey, my Yankees won their 70th game as of the recording of this video and absolutely nailed the trade deadline. I can't wait to finally talk about them on here again, so stay tuned for that if you also like baseball. Oh, I almost forgot, please get down in the comments so that we can have a discussion. If you missed parts 1 and 2, here's that in the end screen. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.